Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Lord. I want to read you a brand new book I just got for the library called Home in the Woods. It was written by Eliza Wheeler, and one of the cool things about this book is it is based on true events. Here we go. Oh, and I should say the true events happened during a time called the Great Depression. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Home in the Woods. This is my family. Ray, 14, B, 12, Rich, 10, Mum, 34, Marv, 8. This is me, Marvel. She's 6, Lowell is 4, Dal, 2, Eva, 3 months. I don't know if I said this kid yet. Marv is 8. Good-sized family. Dad lives with the angels now, and we need to find a new home. Summer. Deep in these woods, we find a shack all wrapped in tar paper. It's hot outside. The shack looks cold and empty, like I feel inside. You never know what treasures we'll find, says Mum. In the shack, we don't see any treasures. Wooden table, empty crates, rusty oven, dusty shelf, potbelly stove, box springs. In case you don't know, that's what you put a mattress on top of to make it bouncy. But Lowell and Eva find a door in the floor. Below is a root cellar filled with old glass jars, a tin pail, a pile of rags, and a pitcher pump that goes up and down, and out comes a stream of cool, clear water. This place will do fine, says my big brother Ray, but it doesn't seem like much of a home to me. Outside the ground is a blanket of rotting leaves. Dal and Bee dig underneath to find soft, dark, rich soil. Seeds from our old garden can go here, says Bee. When the crystal rains fall, our seeds slowly take root. Some treasures take a little time, says Mum. The songs of happy frogs echo through the trees. The woods are a tangle of birch, poplar, pine, and sugar maple. Marv finds the secret paths of white-tailed deer woven all around. The paths lead us to a twisting trout creek, an empty beaver lodge, and a blooming berry patch with sweet jewels of red and blue. We fill our pail, Marv's hat, Ray's bag, Lowell fills his empty belly. Our laughter echoes through the trees. Autumn. Cool winds come and spice up the air and fill it with rust and ruby leaves. Mum walks into town to do chores for pay, so we take care of chores at the shack. Rich writes them on paper slips that we draw from a hat. Split wood, wash up, hang clothes, pull weeds, pick veggies, sweep some. We fill the glass jars with Mum's berry preserves and the harvest from our garden. We'll save them for winter and stack them in the cellar like buried treasure. We need more supplies, so we head to Bennett's General Store. The windows are full of marvelous things. Catalog dresses, pearly sweets, shiny tools, wind-up toys. But Mum's chore money can only buy some basics. baking flour, soap flakes, lamp oil. We say nothing at all on the long walk home. Back at the shack, we invent a new game, General Store. We can buy anything we want. Rich is the banker. Marv pumps gas. B sells fine hats. Lowell is the jeweler. I display mud sweets. Our laughter echoes through the trees once again. Winter. The days are dark and bitter winds blow. Ray and Marv trek out to hunt for food. Bee huddles and the lamps glow. Mum teaches her that scraps put together make colored patchwork. I huddle by the warm stove. Rich teaches me that letters put together make words, and words put together make stories. Most days, Ray and Marv return from their hunt with nothing at all. But tonight they are proud and tall. We plunder our stores and Mum works the oven like magic. A feast for the kings and queens of the forest, Rich says. Baked green beans, soft loaf bread, wild turkey stew, blueberry pie. Snow falls in a blanket of diamonds all around the shack. The jack pines sway above as we fall asleep close together, but Mum stays awake into the night, whispering to the stars. Spring. After many months, warm, fresh air comes pouring into the shack. The cottonwoods are all in bloom. Me and Bee carry Mum's loaf bread and blueberry jam to the neighbor's farm. They fill our pail with milk and our hat with golden eggs. We go slow and careful on the path home. Bee calls out the flowers' names. Wood violet, dwarf iris, pink lady slipper, pitcher plant. The songs of the happy birds echo through the trees. Here in these woods, I find my brothers, my sisters, our Mum, and me, Marvel. The shack all wrapped in tar paper looks different now, warm and bright, and filled up with love, like I feel inside. There's a note from the author to talk about what the story is really about. Here's an actual photograph of the people she wrote about. And this would be her grandma. No, this would be her grandma when she was a little girl, and this is her grandma's mom. I want to read this to you because it's really interesting. In the fall of 1932, during the Great Depression, when my grandma Marvel was 6, her family was evicted from their home in Bennett, a small town in northern Wisconsin. Her father, a munitions factory worker, began moving their belongings into an abandoned tar paper shack deep in the woods, but he ended up dying of cancer before being able to spend a single night there. His wife Clara, the 34-year-old daughter of Norwegian immigrants, was left to care for their 8 children, ages 3 months to 14 years old. With a little aid from the mother's pension, an FDR program that's Roosevelt, who was one of our presidents, and some janitorial work, they learned to survive mainly by growing vegetables, picking berries. She canned 40 quarts of blueberries each year, fishing for trout and hunting squirrel, rabbit, and deer. Neighbors also shared in any ways they could during those lean times. My grandma's family lived in that shack for about 5 years. I grew up hearing stories of that time from my grandma Marvel, how her mother was able to make delicious food out of whatever they had, how they had to come up with their own games since they had no toys. My grandma wants you to know that their favorite game called General Store in this book was really called That Game. There were stories of below 0 degree winters, made especially harsh by the weather coming off Lake Superior, My great uncle Lowell recalled cutting firewood inside the shack on those days in order to continually feed the stove. They couldn't let the fire go out or they would freeze. What an incredibly hard time it must have been, and yet they recall the memories from those years as some of their best. They all had purpose and found inventive ways to work together and make it fun. At the time of this writing, 4 of the 8 siblings are still with us. Eva is 87, Lowell, 91, Marvel, 93, and Rich, 97. This book is inspired not only by the stories from their childhood, but by the entire generation that experienced the Great Depression. They will soon be gone, and if we haven't yet collected their stories, the time is now. So, if you don't know much about the Great Depression, it was a terrible time in our nation's history where people lost their jobs and they went hungry, and they literally had to do things like this to survive. They lost their homes, they couldn't buy food. It was bad. But if I know my grandma was a little girl during the Great Depression, and this book makes me want to talk to her more and find out more from her. She's told me a few stories, but I would love to hear more about what that was like. And someday, boys and girls, whether you know it or not, you're living through some times that are pretty unique as well. And someday, when you have kids and grandkids, you can tell them the story about what it was like to live during the pandemic, during the time when we had the coronavirus. Someday that will be part of your story. So next time, later this week, I'm going to show you a resource where we can learn a little bit more about the Great Depression and what happened to people during that time. So I will talk to you again later, boys and girls. Stay safe. See you soon.